My name is Geraldine, and at 55 years old, I thought I had seen it all when it came to raising my daughter alone. When Sarah announced her engagement, I was over the moon imagining myself helping with wedding preparations, sharing those precious mother-daughter moments I had dreamed about since she was little. I secretly started setting aside every penny I could for her special day, working extra shifts and cutting back on everything just to make her wedding perfect. Little did I know that my act of love would lead to the most heartbreaking betrayal and ultimately the most powerful lesson of my life. Before I share what happened, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below, and please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories that will leave you speechless. Now let me tell you how my daughter's dream wedding became my worst nightmare. The first crack in my heart began 3 months before Sarah's wedding day. I remember sitting in my small kitchen staring at my phone after another brief, cold conversation with my 26-year-old daughter. Sarah had always been independent and strong-willed traits I had actually encouraged after her father passed away 8 years earlier. But lately something felt different, distant, like she was slowly erasing me from her life. The change started when Marcus entered the picture 2 years ago. Marcus Williams, 28 years old, worked in finance for some prestigious firm downtown. He came from what people called old money, the kind of family that owned country clubs and had their names engraved on hospital wings. The kind of wealth that made my modest teacher's pension look like pocket change. I first met Marcus at a dinner Sarah had reluctantly arranged 6 months into their relationship. He was polite enough, called me ma'am, complimented my pot roast, but there was something in his eyes when he looked around my small duplex. Not disgust exactly, more like confusion, as if he couldn't quite understand how people lived this way. Sarah barely spoke during that dinner, constantly watching his reactions, and I could see her mentally cataloguing everything about our home that might embarrass her. After that night, the visits became less frequent. Phone calls grew shorter. Where Sarah once called me every few days to chat about work, her friends, or just life in general, now our conversations felt scripted and hurried. She would ask about my health, mention she was busy, and promise to call back soon. Those return calls came later and later, until sometimes they didn't come at all. The engagement announcement came through a text message, with a photo of a ring that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. No visit, no excited phone call. Just a picture with the words, "We're engaged." Marcus proposed at the yacht club. More details soon. I stared at that message for 20 minutes, wondering when my relationship with my only child had become so formal, so distant. I tried calling her immediately, my heart pounding with excitement despite the cold delivery of the news. When she finally answered, her voice carried that same detached tone that had become so familiar. "Mum, I was going to call you later. We just got back from telling Marcus's parents. Oh, honey, I'm so happy for you. Tell me everything. When did it happen? How did he propose?" It was very romantic. He had the whole thing planned out with his family's event coordinator. The yacht club was decorated with white roses, and there was a string quartet. I felt a pang in my chest. His family's event coordinator. A string quartet. This was a world I didn't even know existed, let alone belonged to. That sounds beautiful, sweetheart. I can't wait to hear all about the wedding plans. I know this is going to be such a special time for us. There was a pause that lasted just a beat too long. Actually, Mom, Marcus and I have already met with a wedding planner. His mother recommended someone who handles all the high-end events in the city. We've got most of the big decisions made already. The words hit me like a slap. Most of the big decisions made already. What about trying on dresses together? What about choosing flowers? What about all those mother-daughter moments I had been dreaming about? Well, I'd love to meet this wedding planner and see how I can help. Maybe we could go dress shopping together this weekend. I actually already found my dress, Mum. Marcus's cousin owns a boutique and she had the perfect one in stock. But thanks for offering. I sat in my kitchen after that call, staring at the refrigerator where I still had a magazine clipping from when Sarah was 16. It was a picture of a mother and daughter looking at wedding dresses, both of them laughing. Sarah had pointed to it and said, "That's going to be us someday, Mum. We're going to have the best time planning my wedding." The memory felt like it belonged to someone else's life. That night, lying awake in my bed, I made a decision that would change everything. If Sarah didn't want my emotional support or my presence in her wedding planning, maybe I could show my love in a different way. I could give her the wedding of her dreams, even if she never knew it came from me. The next morning, I started researching wedding planners in the city. It didn't take long to figure out who Sarah was working with. A quick search for high-end wedding planners and cross-referencing with the yacht club's preferred vendor list led me to Priscilla Hart, owner of Hart Events. Her website showcased elaborate weddings with five-figure budgets, exactly the kind of affair Sarah was planning. I called Priscilla's office, my hands shaking as I dialed. Her assistant transferred me after I explained I needed to discuss a confidential matter regarding the Williams Powell wedding. "Mrs. Powell, how can I help you?" Priscilla's voice was warm but professional. "Ms. Hart, I'm Sarah's mother, Geraldine. I need to meet with you about something very important, but it has to be completely confidential." We arranged to meet at a small cafe across town the next day. I barely slept that night, going over what I would say, how I would explain my unusual request. Priscilla arrived exactly on time, a well-dressed woman in her 40s with the kind of polished appearance that screamed success. She ordered a complicated coffee drink while I stuck with regular black coffee, a detail that somehow emphasized the gap between my world and this one I was trying to navigate. "Mrs. Powell, I have to say your request was quite mysterious. How can I help you?" I took a deep breath. "I want to pay for Sarah's wedding, all of it, but she can never know the money came from me." Priscilla's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide her surprise. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. The Williams family has already put down deposits for most of the major expenses." "No, they haven't. I need you to call them and tell them there was a mistake, that the deposits were processed incorrectly, and that someone else has taken care of the financial arrangements. They'll assume it was Marcus's family covering more costs." I could see Priscilla processing this information, probably wondering if I was completely crazy. "Mrs. Powell, we're talking about a significant amount of money. The total budget Sarah and Marcus approved is $95,000. That includes the venue catering, flowers, photography, music, and decorations." $95,000. It was every penny I had saved over the past 8 years, plus the small life insurance payout I had been keeping for emergencies. It was my security, my retirement fund, everything I had worked for since becoming a widow. "I understand the amount. I have the money. But why would you do this secretly? Most mothers would want their daughters to know about such a generous gift." I stared into my coffee cup, trying to find words for the pain that had been growing in my chest for months. "Because she doesn't want me to be part of this wedding in any other way. Her future in-laws have made it clear that I don't fit into their vision of how this should go. Sarah has chosen their approval over our relationship, but she's still my daughter, and if this is the only way I can give her happiness, then that's what I'll do." Priscilla's expression softened. "Mrs. Powell, are you absolutely certain about this? Once we proceed, there's no going back." "I'm certain." Over the next 2 hours, Priscilla walked me through every detail of the wedding she had planned with Sarah. The venue was Elmwood Manor, a restored 19th century estate in the countryside. complete with gardens, a grand ballroom, and guest accommodations. The flower arrangements would feature white roses and baby's breath, elegant and timeless. The catering would serve a five-course dinner with wine pairings for 120 guests. A renowned photographer would capture every moment, and a jazz quartet would provide music for both the ceremony and reception. Every detail was perfect, exactly what I would have wanted for Sarah if money had been no object. I wrote check after check, watching my bank account balance drop to almost nothing. But with each signature, I felt something unexpected. Not just the pain of spending my life savings, but a strange sense of peace. This was my gift to my daughter, my way of saying I loved her even when she couldn't love me back the way I needed. Priscilla handled everything beautifully. She called the Williams family that afternoon and explained that a benefactor had stepped forward to cover the wedding expenses, wanting to remain anonymous. The family, apparently accustomed to such gestures from wealthy friends, accepted the explanation without question. That evening, Sarah called me, her voice more animated than it had been in months. "Mum, you'll never believe what happened. Someone amazing has taken care of almost all our wedding expenses. Marcus thinks it might be one of his father's business partners, someone who wants to stay anonymous. Isn't that incredible?" "That's wonderful, honey. You deserve to have everything you've dreamed of." I'm so relieved. I was actually getting worried about how we were going to afford everything we wanted. But now it's perfect. Everything is going to be perfect. Perfect. Everything except the fact that her mother wouldn't be there to see it. But I didn't say that. Instead, I told her how happy I was for her, and listened as she described details of the wedding I had actually paid for. For a few precious minutes, she sounded like my daughter again, excited and grateful and full of joy. Even if that joy wasn't because of me, it was still my daughter's voice, and I held on to every word. After we hung up, I sat in my living room surrounded by bank statements and receipts, evidence of the biggest financial decision of my life. I had given Sarah her dream wedding, and she would never know it came from a mother's love. At the time, I thought that was enough. I thought the sacrifice would somehow bridge the distance between us, that love could work in the shadows and still transform everything. I had no idea that the real test was still coming. 3 weeks before the wedding, my phone rang at 7:30 on a Tuesday evening. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, but something in the way it rang seemed urgent, different from her usual brief check-in calls. "Hello, sweetheart." "Mom." Her voice was flat cold in a way I had never heard before. Not distant like it had been lately, but actually hostile. "I need to tell you something about the wedding." My stomach immediately tightened. "What is it?" "Is everything all right?" "Mum, I need you to know that you're not going to be at the wedding." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually gasped, sitting down heavily on my kitchen chair. "What do you mean I'm not going to be at the wedding, Sarah? I'm your mother. I know who you are, but Marcus's family has made it very clear how they feel about the guest list, and they don't think you would be comfortable there. They don't think I would be comfortable, or they don't think they would be comfortable with me there." There was a pause, and when Sarah spoke again, her voice had that rehearsed quality that told me this conversation had been planned, probably scripted. "Mum, you have to understand. This wedding is very important to Marcus's career. His father's business associates will be there along with some very prominent families from the city. The Williams family has a certain reputation to maintain, and they feel that mixing different social circles could create an awkward situation." "Different social circles, Sarah. I raised you by myself after your father died. I worked 2 jobs to put you through college. I'm not some embarrassment to be hidden away." "It's not personal, Mum. It's just practical. You wouldn't know anyone there, and you would probably feel out of place anyway. Marcus and I both agree that this is for the best. The phrase, Marcus and I both agree, felt like another slap. When had my daughter started seeing me through his family's eyes? When had she begun to view her own mother as something to be managed and excluded? Sarah, listen to yourself. You're talking about your wedding and you're telling your mother she can't come because she might embarrass you in front of rich people. That's not what I said. That's exactly what you said. You just used prettier words. I could hear her breathing on the other end, and I wondered if somewhere deep down my real daughter was still there, horrified by what she was saying. But when she spoke again, her voice remained firm. Mom, this decision is final. Marcus's mother has already finalized the seating arrangements and there's no place for you. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but this is how it has to be. The casual cruelty of, sorry if that hurts your feelings, made me close my eyes. This wasn't my Sarah talking. This was someone else wearing my daughter's voice. But there is one more thing, she continued, and I heard a slight change in her tone. We've run into some unexpected last-minute expenses. The flowers ended up costing more than we planned, and there are some additional fees for the venue that we didn't anticipate. I was hoping maybe you could lend us $10,000 to cover everything. Just temporarily, of course. We'll pay you back after the honeymoon when our finances settle down. The audacity of it left me speechless for a moment. She was telling me I couldn't attend my own daughter's wedding because I wasn't good enough for her new family, but my money was still welcome. Let me understand this correctly. I can't come to your wedding, but you want me to give you $10,000 to help pay for it. It's not like that, Mum. These are separate issues. No, Sarah, they're not separate issues. They're exactly the same issue. You want my money, but not my presence. You want my financial support, but not my emotional support. You want me to fund your new life while being excluded from it. Mum, you're being dramatic. I just need help with some expenses, and then we can talk about our relationship after things settle down. After things settle down, Sarah, I'm your mother. I'm not some business associate whose relationship can be put on hold until it's convenient. Look, can you help us with the money or not? I need to know tonight because we have to confirm some final payments tomorrow. I stared at my kitchen wall at the small framed photo of Sarah's college graduation. In that picture, she was hugging me tight, both of us laughing. Her graduation speech had thanked me for being her rock, her inspiration, her best friend. That girl seemed like a stranger now. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Do you love me? Mom, of course I love you. That's a ridiculous question. Then how can you ask me to pay for a wedding I'm not allowed to attend? How can you tell me I'm not good enough to be there, but my money is good enough to spend? It's not about being good enough. It's about fitting in. It's about what's best for everyone involved. What's best for everyone involved would be for my daughter to stand up to her future in-laws and tell them that her mother will be at her wedding period. I can't do that, Mum. I won't risk my relationship with Marcus's family over this. They're going to be my family now, and I need them to accept me. And what about me? What about the family you already have? The silence that followed was longer than any pause in our conversation. When Sarah finally spoke, her words cut deeper than anything else she had said. Mum, you're going to be fine. You've always been fine on your own. But I need this marriage to work, and I need Marcus's family to approve of me. I can't afford to rock the boat over something like this. Something like this. My presence at my daughter's wedding was something like this. I can't give you the money, Sarah. What? Why not, Mum? We really need this help. Because I won't pay for a wedding that I'm not welcome to attend. Because I won't enable you to treat me this way. and because I'm starting to wonder if the daughter I raised would even want me to. Mum, you're being unreasonable. No, Sarah. For the first time in months, I'm being completely reasonable. Goodbye. I hung up the phone and sat in my kitchen for the rest of the evening, not moving, not crying, just thinking. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear my neighbours coming home from work, cooking dinner, living their normal lives. But my world had just shifted completely. My daughter had chosen her new family over me, and now she wanted me to pay for that choice. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt something other than heartbreak. I felt anger. Clean, clear, powerful anger. And with that anger came a realization that would change everything. I had more power in this situation than my daughter knew. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that grew cold hours ago, staring at the business card Priscilla Hart had given me weeks earlier. The card was cream-coloured, with elegant black lettering, the kind of understated luxury that Marcus's family probably appreciated. By 6 in the morning, I had made my decision. I called Priscilla's office as soon as it opened at 8. Her assistant tried to schedule an appointment, but I insisted it was urgent. Mrs. Powell, what can I do for you? Priscilla's voice carried concern. Is there an issue with the wedding preparations? Priscilla, I need to ask you something directly, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Does Sarah know that I paid for her wedding? There was a pause. No, she doesn't. As we discussed, she believes the costs are being covered by an anonymous benefactor connected to Marcus's family. She's never asked for specifics, and I've never volunteered them. And all the contracts for the venue, the catering, the flowers, everything, they're all in my name as the paying party. Yes, that's correct. You're listed as the primary client on all vendor agreements. The Williams family believes they're dealing with a third-party arrangement, but legally and financially, everything runs through you. I took a deep breath. Priscilla, I need to cancel everything. The silence on the other end was so complete, I wondered if the call had dropped. Mrs. Powell, did you say cancel everything? Yes. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the photographer, the music. All of it. I want everything cancelled as of today. Mrs. Powell, the wedding is in 3 weeks. Some of these vendors have non-refundable deposits. You could lose thousands of dollars. How much will I lose? Probably around 30% of the total costs. Maybe $28,000 to $30,000. And how much will I get back? Around $65,000 to $70,000. I thought about my conversation with Sarah the night before. I thought about her telling me I wasn't good enough to attend her wedding. I thought about her asking for $10,000 in the same conversation where she banned me from the most important day of her life. Do it. Cancel everything. Mrs. Powell, are you absolutely certain? Once I make these calls, there's no going back. Sarah's wedding will be ruined. Priscilla, my daughter, told me last night that I'm not invited to her wedding because her new family doesn't think I'm good enough to be there. In the same conversation, she asked me to give her $10,000 to help pay for it. My daughter wants to use my money to fund a wedding I'm not allowed to attend. I could hear Priscilla's sharp intake of breath. She said that to you. Those were her exact words. She said mixing social circles would be awkward, that I wouldn't fit in, and that the decision was final. But she still wanted me to write her a check. Mrs. Powell, I am so sorry. I had no idea the situation had become so hostile. It's not your fault. You've been nothing but professional and kind throughout this entire process. But I will not pay $95,000 for the privilege of being excluded from my own daughter's life. What do you want me to tell the vendors about the reason for cancellation? I thought about that for a moment. Tell them the truth. Tell them the person paying for the wedding has been uninvited by the bride, and under those circumstances, I'm no longer comfortable funding the event. And when Sarah and her family ask what happened, tell them they'll need to take that up with their anonymous benefactor. Don't mention my name unless they figure it out themselves. Over the next 2 hours, Priscilla and I systematically dismantled Sarah's dream wedding. The venue was understanding but firm about their cancellation policy. The caterer was less sympathetic, but agreed to the terms. The florist had already prepared some arrangements and couldn't refund those costs. The photographer was booked solid and wouldn't be available if they tried to rebook. With each phone call, I felt something shifting inside me. Not happiness exactly, but a sense of taking back control. For months, I had been a passive victim of my daughter's choices. I had accepted her distance, her coldness, her gradual exclusion of me from her life. I had even paid for the privilege of being rejected. But I was done being passive. When the last vendor confirmed the cancellation, Priscilla and I sat in silence for a moment. Mrs. Powell, what happens now? Now we wait. Sarah will find out in the next day or two when the vendors start calling to confirm the cancellations, and then she'll realize that her anonymous benefactor wasn't quite as anonymous as she thought. Are you prepared for how angry she's going to be? I thought about the little girl who used to crawl into bed with me during thunderstorms, who would hold my hand during scary movies, who wrote me Mother's Day cards, saying I was her hero. Then I thought about the woman who had called me the night before to tell me I wasn't good enough for her wedding. Priscilla, I've been prepared for Sarah's anger for a while now. What I wasn't prepared for was her cruelty. But now that I've seen what she's capable of, I'm ready for whatever comes next. And if she tries to put the wedding back together with Marcus's family's money, then she'll have a wedding that matches her priorities. She'll have chosen his family's money over her mother's love, and she'll have to live with that choice. After I hung up with Priscilla, I walked through my small house looking at the photos of Sarah that covered nearly every surface. Sarah, as a baby. Sarah, starting kindergarten. Sarah, at her high school graduation. Sarah, moving into her first apartment. 26 years of memories, and somehow we had ended up here. I picked up my favorite photo, one taken when Sarah was about 12. We were at a local fair, both of us laughing at something ridiculous. Sarah had her arm around my waist, and she was looking up at me with complete adoration. In that picture, I was her whole world. I set the photo back down and made myself lunch. Tomorrow, Sarah's world was going to fall apart, and she was going to discover that her mother had more power than anyone realized. For the first time in weeks, I actually looked forward to a conversation with my daughter. The call came at 2:15 on Thursday afternoon, 36 hours after I had cancelled everything. I was grading papers at my kitchen table when my phone rang with such urgency that I knew immediately what had happened. "Mom?" Sarah's voice was pure panic. "Mom, something terrible has happened with the wedding. Everything's been cancelled. The venue, the catering, everything." I set down my pen carefully. "What do you mean everything's been cancelled?" "I don't understand what happened. Priscilla called this morning and said there was a problem with the payments, that our benefactor had withdrawn all funding. She said all the contracts have been terminated and we'd have to start over if we want to have a wedding." "That's terrible, sweetheart. What did Marcus's family say?" "They're freaking out. Marcus's mother called everyone she knows, trying to find another venue for 3 weeks from now, but everywhere good is already booked. The photographer we wanted isn't available. The florist says they can't duplicate the arrangements on such short notice. Mum, my wedding is ruined." She was crying now, deep sobs that would have broken my heart just a week ago. Instead, I found myself remarkably calm. "Did Priscilla give you any details about why your benefactor withdrew the funding?" She said something about the person feeling unwelcome at the event, but that doesn't make any sense. It was supposed to be anonymous. How could they feel unwelcome if they were never supposed to be there? I almost smiled. Priscilla had been more clever than I expected. That is strange. Have you thought about asking your benefactor directly what happened? Mum, we don't know who it was. That was the whole point. Marcus's father thinks it might have been one of his business partners, but when he called around, nobody admitted to it. It's like our mystery donor just vanished. Well, I said carefully, maybe they didn't vanish. Maybe they were never as mysterious as you thought. There was a pause. What do you mean? Sarah, I paid for your wedding. All of it. The venue, the flowers, the catering, the photographer, everything. I spent my entire life savings to give you the wedding of your dreams. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear my own heartbeat. What did you just say? I said I paid for your wedding. $95,000. Every penny I had saved since your father died. That's impossible. You don't have that kind of money. I didn't have that kind of money. I do now have $28,000 less than I started with thanks to cancellation fees, but I thought it was worth it to make a point. You cancelled my wedding? Her voice was climbing toward hysteria. You deliberately sabotaged my wedding. I cancelled a wedding that I wasn't allowed to attend. I withdrew funding from an event that I was told I wasn't good enough to be part of. Sarah, you banned me from your wedding and then asked me to pay for it. In what universe did you think that was acceptable? Mom, that's insane. You can't just destroy someone's wedding because your feelings got hurt. My feelings didn't get hurt, Sarah. My heart got broken. There's a difference. And I can absolutely refuse to fund an event where I'm not welcome. I could hear voices in the background and I realized Sarah wasn't alone. Sarah, is Marcus there with you? Yes, he's here. His parents are here too. Mum, you have to fix this. You have to call everyone back and tell them it was a mistake. Put me on speaker, Sarah. I want everyone to hear this. Mum, no, that's not necessary. Put me on speaker or I hang up right now. I heard the click of the speakerphone, and suddenly the room sounded different, larger. Can everyone hear me now? Yes, Mrs. Powell. It was Marcus's voice, tight with barely controlled anger. We can all hear you. Perfect. Now I want to make sure everyone understands the situation clearly. Sarah told me 3 days ago that I was not invited to her wedding because your family felt I wouldn't fit in with your social circle. She said the decision was final and that my presence would be awkward for your business associates and prominent friends. In that same conversation, she asked me to give her $10,000 to help cover wedding expenses. I heard someone gasp, probably Marcus's mother. I spent my life savings to pay for Sarah's wedding because I thought it would be my gift to her happiness. But I will not pay $95,000 for the privilege of being excluded from my own daughter's life. Marcus cleared his throat. Mrs. Powell, I think there might have been some miscommunication about the guest list. No. Marcus, there was no miscommunication. Your fiancée was very clear. She said you both agreed that I shouldn't be there, that it was what was best for everyone involved. Those were her exact words. Mom, Sarah's voice was smaller now, less hysterical. Can't we talk about this privately? No, Sarah, we can't. Because this decision wasn't made privately. You made it with Marcus and his family, so they get to hear about the consequences with you. I heard whispered conversation in the background, voices too low for me to make out words. Mrs. Powell, a woman's voice said. Probably Marcus's mother. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting to discuss this situation. There's nothing to discuss. I've made my decision the same way Sarah made hers. I will not fund a wedding where I'm not wanted. But Mum, Sarah was crying again. Where are we supposed to get $95,000 in 3 weeks? Even if Marcus's parents can help, we can't recreate everything we had planned. Sarah, you should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't good enough for your wedding. You wanted to choose Marcus's family over your mother. Now you get to live with that choice and pay for it too. This is crazy. You're destroying my wedding because you're jealous of Marcus's family. No, Sarah. I'm refusing to enable you to treat me like garbage while expecting me to fund your new life. There's a difference. The line went quiet except for Sarah's crying. When Marcus spoke again, his voice had changed completely. Mrs. Powell, I owe you an apology. I had no idea you were funding the wedding, and I didn't realize how the guest list conversation had been presented to you. If I had known, things would have been handled very differently. Marcus, the damage is done. Sarah made her choice, and now you all get to live with the consequences. The question now is whether you're going to scramble to put together whatever wedding you can afford, or whether you're going to postpone until you can figure out what you really want. What I really want, Sarah said through her tears, is to have my wedding back. Then you should have thought about including your mother in it. I hung up the phone and sat in the sudden silence of my kitchen. Outside, I could hear children playing in the street, completely unaware that my daughter's world had just collapsed. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The next week passed in a blur of frantic phone calls, not to me, but around me. I learned through a mutual friend that Sarah and Marcus had managed to book a small banquet hall across town, nothing like the elegant estate they had originally planned. Marcus's family had agreed to cover the costs, but it was a much smaller, much simpler affair. The guest list had to be cut, by more than half the menu downgraded, the flowers simplified. On Wednesday, 5 days after our confrontation, Sarah showed up at my door. I opened it to find her standing on my porch with red-rimmed eyes and an expression I hadn't seen since she was a little girl caught in a lie. "Mum, can I come in?" I stepped aside and let her enter. She walked into my living room and sat down on the couch where she used to curl up for movie nights when she was in high school. "The new wedding is this Saturday," she said quietly. "I heard. How are the preparations going?" "Everything's smaller than we planned. Different. Marcus's mother is handling most of the arrangements because we don't have time to interview new vendors." She looked around my living room as if seeing it for the first time in years. "Mum, I need to ask you something." "What's that?" "Did you really spend your entire life savings on my wedding?" I sat down in my armchair, the one her father used to sit in every evening after work. "Yes, I did. But that was your retirement money. Your security." "Yes, it was." "Why would you do something like that?" I studied my daughter's face, looking for signs of the little girl who used to ask me to check for monsters under her bed. "Because I love you. Because I wanted you to have everything you dreamed of, even if you didn't want me to be part of it." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Mum, I messed up. I know I messed up." "Yes, you did." Marcus's family, they're not bad people, but they have very strong opinions about how things should be done. When Marcus and I got engaged, his mother immediately started talking about the kind of wedding we should have, the kind of guests who would be appropriate, the kind of image we needed to present. "And you agreed with her?" "I was scared. I was scared that if I didn't fit into their world perfectly, Marcus would realize he had made a mistake. His ex-girlfriend was from their social circle, and his mother always talked about how elegant and appropriate she was. I felt like I was constantly being compared to this person who understood all their unwritten rules." I waited, letting her continue. "When his mother suggested that maybe we should keep the wedding small and intimate, focusing on people who really knew Marcus's family well, I thought she was trying to help me avoid feeling overwhelmed, but then she started talking about the guest list, and your name wasn't on it. And you didn't fight for me. I didn't fight for you. She was crying steadily now. I told myself it was just one day, that our relationship was more important than one event. But then when you asked about helping with the wedding, I felt guilty, like I was lying to you about something huge, so I started pulling away because I didn't know how to tell you the truth. The truth being that you had chosen them over me. The truth being that I was a coward. I was so afraid of losing Marcus that I was willing to lose you instead. We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Sarah spoke again. Mum, I know I don't deserve it, but would you consider coming to the wedding on Saturday? I had been expecting this question, and I had already decided on my answer. No, Sarah. She looked up sharply. No. No. Because you're asking me to come to your wedding, but you haven't actually changed anything that led us here. You're still planning to marry Marcus. You're still going to be part of his family, and from what I can tell, you're still more concerned about their approval than about our relationship. That's not true. Isn't it, Sarah? When did you realize I had paid for your wedding? When you told me. And when did you decide you wanted me there? She was quiet. You wanted me there when you realized you needed my money. You want me there now that Marcus's family is picking up the bill, and you're getting a smaller wedding than you wanted. But you never wanted me there when you thought everything was perfect. Mum, I always wanted you there. I just didn't know how to make everyone happy. You didn't want to make everyone happy, Sarah. You wanted to make them happy. There's a difference. She wiped her eyes with a tissue from her purse. So what happens now? Do you just never forgive me? I don't know yet. Right now I'm still trying to figure out who my daughter really is. Because the girl I raised would never have treated her mother the way you treated me. The girl I raised would have told Marcus's family that her mother would be at her wedding period, and if they didn't like it, they could stay home. You're right. I should have done that. But you didn't. And now I need to see what kind of person you become going forward. I need to see if you're going to keep choosing their approval over our relationship, or if you're going to remember where you came from. Sarah stood up slowly. Mum, I love you. I know I didn't show it, but I do love you. I love you too, sweetheart. But right now, love isn't enough. Right now, I need to see respect. She nodded and walked toward the door. Before she left, she turned back. The money you lost on the cancellation fees, Marcus wants to pay you back for that. Tell Marcus I don't want his family's money. I made my choice and I'll live with the consequences of it, just like you're going to live with the consequences of yours. After she left, I sat in my quiet house and realized that for the first time in months, I felt proud of myself. I had stood up for my own worth. I had refused to be treated as disposable while still being expected to provide financial support. It was a start. Sarah's second wedding took place on a rainy Saturday in October. I spent that day working in my garden, pulling up the summer flowers that had finished blooming and preparing the beds for winter. It felt appropriate somehow, clearing away what had died to make room for whatever might grow next. I didn't hear from Sarah for 3 weeks after the wedding. When she finally called, her voice sounded different, quieter, more thoughtful. Mum, Marcus and I are back from our honeymoon. How was it? It was good. We did a lot of talking about things. About us, about family, about what we want our marriage to look like. And what did you decide? We decided that I need to fix things with you, not because it would make our life easier, but because it's the right thing to do. Because you're my mother, and I treated you terribly. I set down the book I had been reading. What does fixing things mean to you? It means I want to start over. I want to rebuild our relationship, but I want to do it right this time. And Marcus wants to be part of that. He wants to get to know you properly without his parents managing every interaction. And his parents are going to have to learn to accept the fact that I have a mother who raised me and loves me and deserves their respect. If they can't do that, then we'll see them less often. It was a start, but I had learned not to get my hopes up too quickly. Sarah, I appreciate what you're saying, but I need to see actions, not just words. I know. That's why I'm calling. Marcus and I want to invite you to dinner this Sunday. Just the three of us at our apartment. I want to cook for you the way I used to when I was in college, and you would visit. And this isn't about managing your relationship with Marcus's family. This is about managing my relationship with my mother. Everything else comes second. Over the following months, Sarah kept her word. She called regularly, not with the distant politeness that had characterized our conversations for the past 2 years, but with real warmth and interest. She asked about my work, my friends, my life beyond being her mother. Marcus joined our conversations more often, and I began to see glimpses of the man Sarah had fallen in love with, rather than just the representative of a family that had rejected me. In December, 6 months after the cancelled wedding, Sarah and Marcus invited me to Christmas dinner with his family. It was awkward at first, but Marcus's parents made a genuine effort to include me in conversations and to treat me with the courtesy they would show any family member. Sarah's mother-in-law even asked me about my teaching career and seemed genuinely interested in my stories about working with teenagers. It wasn't friendship, but it was respect, and respect was enough. The real breakthrough came in February, when Sarah called me crying about a fight she had had with Marcus over finances. For 45 minutes, she talked through her frustrations and fears the way she used to when she was younger. She asked for my advice and actually listened to my responses. When we hung up, I realized that my daughter had come home. Not to my house, but to our relationship. It's been a year now since I cancelled Sarah's first wedding, and I've learned something important about love and boundaries. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's worst behavior, even when that someone is your own child. Sarah and Marcus will celebrate their first anniversary next month, and they're planning a small party to mark the occasion. They've asked me to help with the preparations, and Sarah jokes that this time she wants her mother to be involved from the very beginning. Marcus laughs along with her jokes, but I can see in his eyes that he understands how close they came to losing something irreplaceable. The money I lost in cancellation fees turned out to be the best investment I ever made. Not because it got me what I wanted, but because it taught my daughter that my love wasn't unconditional acceptance of poor treatment. It taught her that relationships require mutual respect and that choosing to exclude family has consequences. I still have the photos from that day I spent in my garden during her second wedding. The flower beds look bare and sad, everything cleared away and empty. But I also have photos from this spring when new growth started appearing in those same beds. The garden came back stronger than before, because I had done the hard work of clearing out what wasn't healthy. Sometimes relationships are like that too. Sometimes you have to clear away everything that isn't working, even when it looks destructive, even when it hurts, even when people think you're being unreasonable. Sometimes you have to be willing to lose everything you thought you wanted in order to create space for what you actually need. Sarah and I have both learned that love without respect is just enabling, and that boundaries aren't walls built to keep people out. They're foundation built to help relationships grow stronger. My daughter didn't need a mother who would accept any treatment just to stay connected. She needed a mother who valued herself enough to demand better, who loved her enough to let her face the consequences of her choices, and who was strong enough to wait for real change instead of accepting empty promises. The most important lesson I learned is that sometimes the people we love most need to see us walk away before they understand what they're about to lose. Not because we don't love them, but because we do. I still think about that little girl who used to plan our future mother-daughter wedding adventures. She's still there inside the woman Sarah has become. But now she's grown up enough to understand that love is a verb, not just a feeling. It requires action, respect, and the willingness to fight for what matters most. And what matters most isn't always what's easiest. What's your relationship like with your adult children? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with someone you love? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if my story resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and the hard choices we sometimes have to make for love. And please share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for yourself, even with family. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept less than you deserve.